Have you ever thought, Baldur's Gate is cool and all, but it's a bit too slow for me. I want the combat to be in real time. Well, do I have a mod for you. The absolute legend Tiny Bike recently released a mod that completely removes the turn-based combat from Baldur's Gate. And yep, it is just as chaotic as it sounds. Before we begin, this mod is still at a very early stage and a lot of things are buggy. But as you're about to see, it is still really awesome, and I will leave a link to the mod author's channel down below. He is constantly making updates to it, so if you want to try it for yourself, then don't hesitate to go check him out. Alright, let's get into it. I'm gonna choose Karlach here, because I think thematically this playthrough will fit her character very well. As you're going to see, this mod gets very stressful very quickly, so I really wanted to get as strong as I could, and therefore made sure to go ahead and pick up us before proceeding towards Lae'zel. And so we arrive at our very first combat, and even with just 3 enemies, it is already pretty hard to grasp what is actually going on, and this will not get any better. Something I noticed here is that casting spells that require us to be in combat is not even possible, which means that we simply can't ever rage. Maybe Karlach wasn't the best choice after all. Arriving at the helm, we get into our first real combat. But let's just say that things didn't quite go to plan, as the very primitive AI that the mod maker implemented decides to do this. What? Okay. There might be a few small quirks, like the fact that these idiots just ran back and killed me. What are you guys doing to me? When I finally managed to actually prevent them from just running out and killing themselves, the problem of Salk and the Mind Flayers still remained. At first, they will be very focused on each other, so beating them down is no problem. However, when one dies, the other one will immediately aggro on my entire party, and since they can just attack whenever they want here, will instantly one-shot my entire team. So I had to make sure to slowly bring them both down to low health and then finish them around the same time. Successfully off the Nautiloid now, with Salk's weapon collected, we also get level 2. And even though level 1 Barbarian basically gives us nothing at all, we get Reckless Attack here, giving us advantage on every single attack for the low price of giving everyone that tries to hit us the same. Something which is really easy to see here is just how much of a struggle it is to actually click on the enemies. Even with a mod that prevents you from clicking on anything that is not an enemy, it is still really hard to successfully use an attack on enemies, making my first attempt at this fight a complete failure. To make up for this, I had to either wait for the enemies to attack us or just stop completely. And by doing this, I easily got past them. Right next to them, we also get 2 more very needed companions in the form of Asterion and Gale. Right, they're gonna go beat that guy up, and I can beat this woman up. Nice. The bigger fights in this game, like the one outside of the grove here, sure don't get any less chaotic either. Alright, it's time. Here we go. Oh my god, ow. What is happening? Kill the bugbear. I did notice something weird here though. The fact that both enemies and allies would sometimes use otherwise non-targetable abilities on each other. Like Will using Dip on this goblin. This is obviously unintended, but it will be very useful soon, so just keep it in mind. There's a real problem with what to level in this mod. Since the companion AI is so simplistic, most of them simply hit with their weapon or use a cantrip, so putting any real points into mage classes is not really a good idea. But neither is leveling the more melee-focused classes. We can't even use rage, and the otherwise extremely important extra attack won't do anything either. So for now, I just put a single point into fighter for at least somewhat of an upgrade in the form of a singular fighting style. In the grove, I make sure to quickly save the child, barely, and collect the ring of protection from Mole by just straight up walking up and grabbing the statue. I also decide to take care of Nettie, who decides to start the fight by sitting on a chair. An interesting choice to say the least. With the usual disguise self, we can make it to the Blighted Village and over to the Goblin Camp, where Wither shows up in camp for the first time. My first idea here was to recruit a paladin hireling and have him run around and smite everyone, but for some reason he simply did not feel like triggering smites upon attacking. Despite this, I somehow managed managed to free Halcyon and reach level 4. And even though most of our normal levels won't do much for us, at least with level 4 we get a feat, which we can put into Great Weapon Master. One of the few things that actually will help us, giving us a flat plus 10 damage to all our attacks.
Oh god, here he comes. Beat him up. Okay, he's dead. I gotta heal. They're actually casting spells. That's amazing. Hello, Halcyon, bro. You crazy. Whoa! What is happening? Oh, that Thara's here. Why is me? Oh, we did it! Woo!
After whatever that was, it was time to make my way over to the mountain pass. It was also at this point where I decided to respec all my companions into barbarians, as the amount of damage that could be dished out was simply way higher than any other class, and it definitely worked. It was now time to head down into the Underdark.
Alright, it's time to fight him. Whoa! What was that? Paranoid dreams? What? Kill it, Gale. Kill it. It has 1 HP. Alright, it's dead. I have never done this fight. I did not even know he had a legendary action.
For now, I just make sure to get the waypoint here, but we will be returning very shortly for this beautiful creature right here, as he is what will help us completely cheese this entire playthrough. Since I had such a ridiculous amount of damage, I thought that for once, in a mod that is all about combat, I would actually fight the gift. And surprisingly, this went incredibly smooth. I left for the mountain pass, got taken to camp, and beat up Raphael some more for the Helldusk armor. Not really needed, but it's nice nonetheless. With level 5, I decided that it would be a good idea to have at least one cleric on my team that could actually heal my party, as clerics also get to learn Spirit Guardians here, a pretty damn good spell when turn-based combat doesn't exist. I quickly left for Act 2, and after speaking to the Drider and following him down to the ambush spot, I made sure to turn against him as we will be needing his lantern. This fight also went very well due to the sheer amount of allies we have here, and not long after we came out victorious. With the lantern now, we can head into Last Light, and it is time to return over to the Underdark and Glut. By speaking to him, we can get him to join our party, at least temporarily. The reason Glut is so good is not for his stats or his damage, but for one particular ability, Animated Spores. With it, Glut can resurrect most corpses, not everything, but most things, bringing them back with all their previously usable abilities. This is by far one of, if not the strongest ability in the game. Of course, Larian could make it this powerful, since you can't bring Glut out of the Underdark. If you ever try to teleport with him in the party, he will simply state that he must remain in the Underdark. And the same thing happens if you try to walk out with him. So why did I only want to come back to him now? Well, because there just so happens to be an extremely simple yet effective way of getting him out of the Underdark. To do it, we just have to get Glut into our party and then go to camp. This will still keep him in our party, but visually he is not, and it's just wandering around camp. From here, by teleporting to any waypoint that is not in the Underdark, you will hear a small poof before having this happen. Yep, just like that, Glut has followed us all the way into Act 2. He is very buggy here, won't follow us around, and anytime we enter a new area, he will leave our party, forcing us to make him join us again. And yes, you can just do this in the normal game, it has nothing to do with the real-time mod. Now we just need to find someone suitable for him to resurrect. It is a bit annoying to have Glut with us. He won't actually follow us on his own, so I decide to leave him just outside of Moonrise, as he won't die from the Shadow Curse here, before proceeding into the Gauntlet of Shar. The only thing I really want in here is the Spear of Night, so I just make a beeline for it. The encounter with the Justicar here was really easy. The only thing that almost stopped me was the fact that all of my characters almost got stuck inside of the walls. Sadly, this is a pretty normal thing that happens in this mod. Again, another quirk I'm sure the mod maker is looking into. With the Spear of Night collected, it is now time to head over to the Night Song. Turns out that this can be done without even needing to collect a single Umbral gem, by standing in this exact corner and just flying down to the bottom, letting us skip everything and jump right into the Night Song's realm. Balthazar will be here, but as long as we make sure to start by attacking him instead of going through dialogue, he won't have any chance to summon in his horde of allies, easily getting overwhelmed by all of my attacks. Since we have the Spear of Night now, we can have Shadowheart end Night Song, which is the only real way to get her to die. Last Light will suffer for this, but trust me, it will be worth the sacrifice. Something very interesting also happens here. Whenever the Night Song is freed or dies, the way back to Act 1 will completely close. This makes it so that we no longer can speak with Glut, which might sound like a bad thing, but since he no longer has any dialogue, he cannot leave our party. This is perfect as we now have found the perfect person for him to revive, the Night Song. Just reviving her won't be enough though, as she still is caged and cannot move. This is a problem as since she is a Spore Servant, none of her normal abilities work. So if we ever hit her, she will simply die and then stay dead. To fix this, we need level 7, which is still a while away, so I had to run around and get almost all the possible XP that exists in Act 2, apart from Moonrise. With level 7, clerics get the spell Death Ward. Using it on someone allows that creature to survive on 1 hit point instead of dying. Importantly though, it still counts as killing them. So by using this on any Spore Servant and then killing them, they will be brought back to life, no longer a Spore Servant. And in Aylin's case, she's not caged anymore either. And you're now gonna see why the Night Song is by far the strongest character in the entirety of Act 2. She simply cannot be killed. If she dies, she will just resurrect an infinite amount of times, as long as Glut doesn't die, that is. Keep in mind that this is not something which is exclusive to this mod either. You could fire up a normal playthrough of Baldur's Gate and do these exact steps if you want to. The fact that she's unkillable also means that she can bypass the fact that we only can have one Spore Servant at once. As when Glut resurrects another one and she dies, she simply comes back to life. So to get our second Spore Servant, I am finally going to do something which can only be done in this mod. Remember how I pointed out that some companions would do weird things like use dip on enemies? Well, that is finally going to come into play here. Glut cannot resurrect everyone. In fact, he's quite limited on who his animated spores ability can actually target. For instance, Malice Thorm is normally not resurrectable at all since he's an undead. But here is where this strange targeting thing comes in. Currently, this mod just picks an ability for your companions to use. It can be anything, which is why limiting our options with Barbarian was so effective. This means that if we get lucky, Glut can randomly target enemies that otherwise cannot be resurrected, like Malice Thorm, with his animated spores ability, and simply turn them into a Spore Servant mid-combat. This is just as ridiculous as it sounds, and it will completely break the rest of this playthrough. It's also really cool being able to control these enemies and just seeing which abilities they actually have. Since the Night Song is completely unkillable, after some time the enemies just stop trying to attack her, and she therefore is free to just run around and clear out the entirety of Moonrise alone. Time to head up and face Ketheric on the roof. And this encounter was the first one that took quite a few tries. I did have a plan for this encounter that would involve Glut, but the main problem was actually keeping him alive, as he very quickly would just get swarmed and die. Eventually though, I did manage to clear out most enemies while keeping him alive, and then, with a bit of luck, having him stand right next to Ketheric, he did this. He straight up turned Ketheric into a Spore Servant. This immediately triggered the cutscene as if we had killed him, having him escape. Interestingly enough, even though we already killed the Night Song, he still took her with him. Following him down into the colony, everything looked normal, apart from Glut being here, I guess. At least up until we arrive at the second part of this fight. Oh my god, it actually worked. I can control Ketheric. This fight had now turned from what is normally the hardest fight in the game into a fight where I simply controlled the boss. This is probably one of the cooler things I have ever managed to do in this game. I wonder if this move still works. No, game. You can't do this. You're telling me I can make an unlimited amount of Necromites that are all allies? There we go. That's you enough. No way Merkel can handle this many Necromites. Let's just hope that after killing Ketheric here, the normal cutscene will actually trigger, because it very well might not. Thankfully it did, but something which I did not plan for also happened. It's not really Merkel you fight here, but just a changed Ketheric. So after the cutscene ended, since Ketheric was already turned into a Spore Servant, Merkel also got turned into one. If this was not the coolest thing I have ever done in this game before, it definitely became that now. Merkel has all of his normal moves, including his giant scythe, but sadly, I was not able to drop it, but at least I got to do this. Yeah, this is not really about the real-time combat mod anymore, is it? With Merkel as a Spore Servant now, we could simply attack him over and over without having him retaliate at all until the fight was won. Somehow, Ailing also came back, this time with her normal armor and weapon, and with that, we have now collected our very first Netherstone, clearly the intended way. While leaving for Act 3, Glut, alongside the Night Song, actually just follows us. So yeah, you can just bring Glut into Act 3. The first fight with the GIF here was super easy, and even though Glut and the Night Song decided to stay back and wait, the other one would surprisingly enough be even easier. Okay, they just started the fight. Guys, can you relax? I can't even make it to the fight. Wait, what? I feel like a side character in an anime here. Oh, okay, we won. Exiting to Act 3, Glut and the Night Song once again joined us. However, I would notice here that the Night Song no longer had her immortality. Makes me wonder what would have happened if I had saved her old corpse till now. Gortash is next, but I quickly understood that there would be 0% chance I could just fight him head on. There are simply too many Steel Watchers here. So I decided to instead just grab him and walk out, chucking him down a cliff. Interestingly, Gortash is actually one of the few bosses that can be resurrected with Glut, even normally. He does not really start off with anything particularly impressive. However, after reducing his HP slightly, his Invoke the Black Hand reaction triggers, granting him 150 temporary HP, immunity to a few damage types, and some really good moves. Maybe Gortash can take on his own army. I wanna try it. Okay, this is not going great. But I'm just permanently prone, I can't even move. Yeah, seems as though the forces of Wormsrock are even too much for their leader to handle. Now in the lower city, we have a few things to take care of. Gortash is dead. What do you mean Gortash is dead? He's right here. The first thing to take care of was Baldur. This fight can be pretty annoying, but thanks to the massive AoE that Gortash has, he was easily able to solo the entire fight. I think I had to kill around like 100 fists or so, they just kept coming. But eventually it settled down, letting me grab the password and enter to face Saravok. Now, I could probably just have let Gortash take care of this fight as well, but that wouldn't really be interesting. No, instead, we are going to use one of the knights outside, specifically that which guards the strongest of the three. It took a few attempts, but eventually I got Glut to take control of him. What is special about this guy is that he has a move called Hellfire Orb. It deals a massive 20 to 120 damage. To balance this, it can only be used one time per battle, but since this is in real time, there is no such restriction here, letting me spam this move as much as I want. Sadly, he does come with the Soul Oath condition, making it so that anytime Saravok perishes, so will he, but at least we can have him go out in a blaze of glory. That just one-shot all of them. You're not troubled by this at all, Saravok? You're just gonna stand. I mean, fair enough. He's just standing there, taking it to the chin. Sarevok can actually be raised by Glut, so after grabbing the amulet, I make sure to also collect his corpse before moving down towards the Temple of Baal. Since we killed him while he had all his essences absorbed, upon raising Sarevok, he still retains his extra AC, permanent haste, and massive 2 to 24 HP heal per attack. Time for Sarevok himself to go take on Orin. It started off great. With the heal on every attack, I thought that he'd easily be able to win all by himself, and it looked like that was the case, at least up until one of the Baal cultists started spamming Stunning Gaze. Since there's basically no cooldown on anything in this game, enemies in this mod will a lot of the time just spam one of them constantly, and if that happens to be Stunning move, well, you basically have just lost the fight. Second time around went way better as I decided to start by focusing him first, and Orin really didn't put up much of a fight at all against her grandfather. Orin's corpse sadly cannot be reanimated as it immediately turns into a gore pile. I guess just taking her netherstone will have to do. At this point I could very well just have ended the game, but fighting Raphael seemed way too interesting, so instead I headed into the Devil's Fee, borrowed the summoning items from Helsik, and headed into the House of Hope. Harleap was the first enemy we faced, and he really stood no chance. And so after opening the safe, it was time to grab the Orphic Hammer, not because we're actually going to use it, but simply to irritate Raphael. Actually getting over to the fight would be really hard though, as these flaming orbs kept randomly exploding my entire party on the way there. I had to use invisibility and tactically make my way over and down a balcony using a feather falling scroll. Time to face the master of the house. This fight took a few attempts. There is no feasible way I was actually going to beat this fight legit. So my plan was, again, for Glut to control him. But this will not be easy, as there are 6 Cambions, Jurgir, Corilla, and Raphael, all instantly just rushing at us. The only way I found to actually keep him alive was to use Shadowheart, as she, as a cleric, could keep him and my other party members alive long enough for them to dish out some good damage. And eventually, while I was finishing off Jurgir, Glut could control of Raphael, and just like that, the fight was over. Raphael has way more abilities than I actually thought, even though most of them couldn't be used. My plan was to bring Raphael with me to fight the Netherbane, but since the portal won't open out of here until he dies, this won't be an option. But it definitely trivialized the fight just as much as it did with the Merkle one. With the devil dead, all that is left is leaving for the Morphe pool. And after failing a couple of rolls and turning ourselves into a Mind Flayer, we arrive in the upper city and the final battle with the Netherbrain. This fight here wouldn't have been a problem if not for this massive dragon. It has a fear move which covers basically the entire screen, and if it ever decided to use it, it could just perma-stun me and my entire party. I tried this fight again and again and again, but every time it would just spam this move until I lost. It was not until Glut randomly took control of one of the hostile enemies that the solution presented itself. This enemy in particular has an infinite use of the Calm Emotion spell, originally meant to be used as a counter to Barbarian's Rage. However, it also just so happens to make the targets immune to fear. Using this, I could therefore for 10 turns just ignore the dragon's roar. This still did not mean that it was over yet though. I still needed Glut to control it. With its massive fire breath, it took a few more tries as the dragon, despite my best attempts to keep him alive, would sometimes one-shot Glut. It was just a matter of time though, and with enough patience, eventually it happened. Now with the massive dragon instead of my side, the rest of the Illithids stood no chance, and all that was left now was to enter into the final fight with the Netherbrain. Sadly, the dragon could not follow, but this shouldn't be that hard, right? It can't even attack us, and there's no turn timer. What am I dying to? Wait, is it using its reaction every single time I attack it? Okay. Yeah, since there's no turn, the brain always has its reaction, so every time I tried attacking it, it would retaliate with a massive amount of psychic damage. And as it turns out, it is the only entity in the entire game that is immune to getting turned by Glut. Thankfully, this was not impossible though. Since I had turned myself into a Illithid, I could constantly attack it once, and then cast the 25 HP Illithid shield on myself, attack it again, and then just repeat. I did still take damage, but by using Shadowheart's remaining spell slots and my last potion potions, I had more than enough health to finish it off. So yeah, that's Baldur's Gate in real time, kind of. This mod is still very bare bones and has a few issues, which was why a lot of this playthrough was me just completely cheesing it. As in most normal combats, your characters teleport to random locations and get stuck in walls. But it's still a really cool mod and something I highly recommend everyone to try out. Again, I will link to TinyBike, the mod creator's channel, in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.